Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, in my time zone, our classes start in midnight. So I have a day job for, it's not, it's not matter to Friday schedule, but on Wednesday I have to go to the
I,
go
I
to the work after a few hours. So can I change my turns for middle of the line
we can make
or
you go
change to,
first. Yeah. I don't think it's a problem.
okay.
Yeah.
So
So that way you don't have to stay up till like 4 in the morning. I get that.
mhm.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem. We'll just make you go first, just so that we can prevent you from
Just
dying
for Wednesday. Friday no matter because it is
the weekend.
Saturday.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
you. Okay. Well, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I don't think anyone has a problem with that. Does anyone have a problem with that? Maybe,
No.
No.
Serbian bastard, she might. But
I
everyone else,
thought you were gonna say that. Why you pick on me?
but other than her, I think everyone else is fine. But we won't take her opinion. You'll be all right.
Thank you for all of you guys.
It's no problem, really.
Yeah.
Now you say that after I called you out. I know in your hearts of hearts you're furious.
I was so curious.
All right. Yeah, of course we could make that adjustment. Shouldn't be a big deal. Thanks for asking though.
What
I'm
was the
curious to
year
what you would
you?
have said. I'm sorry. I'm curious what you would have said if I said like no. You'd be
I was thinking, should it be a douchebag?
anyway.
Should it be that one person? Um, I was wondering, what was the year you quit the art school? How long you spent
2008,
there before you quit?
2009, I think. I went to school before that too, and that was like 2005 or 6 or something like that. But definitely
I
2009.
yeah, well, I was in art school also, so I feel like I wasted time there because we were always, well, the thing is, I didn't think they didn't have money to pay more models so we can draw. Maybe just didn't want, they didn't care. So for 3 years, we were drawing the same guy from every possible angle, like we couldn't draw him with our eyes closed, and
Uh,
you know we even we were sculpting his head, and it was a disaster. It was like a waste of time. I should spend the time maybe doing digital art and learning this stuff, maybe do more mentorships. I don't know, art school are somehow bad decision to make in your life for some reason.
so I'm indifferent about this. So meaning that like I hear what you're saying, and I actually agree with a lot of what you're saying. Okay, but it's hard for me to say that it was a waste of time. Okay, for a few reasons. One, I met some of the best people I've ever met in my entire life through art school. Right. So if I wouldn't have gone there, I wouldn't have met some of these people. So um, that's a really big win
Okay,
for them.
that's a plus.
Yeah, that's a huge plus. It's not like a small one. Like some of these people I'm still really good friends
Yeah.
with, and some of these people have been with me in the darkest of times too. So you see what I'm getting at? So it's kind of hard for me to kind of be like, I wish I never went, because that would almost be like wishing away that I never met these people. And so I don't say that as much when it comes down to it. Okay, but what I understand what you're trying to say though, right? Like it didn't seem like the best alternative, right? And
Yeah.
what I would say to that is that it's all part of the deal when it comes to becoming a badass, right? Like you have to kind of have those moments where you attended school that was not effective, so that way you can have that in your roster of information. Okay, so a
Mhm.
good way of thinking about this would be One time I was asked a question. Someone asked me a simple question of like, if you can go back in time and change something about your past or tell your old self to do something differently, what would that be? You know?
Hmm.
And I answered that question by saying I wouldn't do it at all. I wouldn't tell myself anything. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, well, let me explain. Like, it's because of all the things that happened to me is why I'm the way that I am today. You know? And all that information and all that wisdom that I gained is super powerful. Okay? And
Yeah, that's true, but I sometimes think, if people know that they want to do digital art and do this for a living, I don't think, I think you should start really early, not to wait, for all those, for the graduation and stuff
yeah,
like that. You don't need
that's
diploma. No one's
that's
gonna ask you for
that's
diploma.
where I agree, right? Like for myself, it's already the damage is done, so it's kind of
Yeah.
pointless to kind of reflect back negatively in that regard. Like it's just like it already happened. But because think about it like this, because I had such a bad experience in school, right? Um, it is what drove me to try to teach others. So imagine if I didn't have that experience, would I have still become a teacher, right?
Well, that's a good point.
Because of what happened to me, like I directly correlate my passion for teaching to the abysmal system, education system, especially here in the States, right? I felt cheated and I saw many of my peers get cheated and a lot of my really close friends go to college and get nothing out of it other than like a piece of paper. And I said, something's got to give. And I'm going to be a part of that. That's when I started my Gumroads to make affordable tutorials for young artists who can't afford Gnomon tutorials, which are hundreds of dollars in some instances. And this is why I did the mentorship to give access to information and education from a professional artist. Even if if you're not from that same country, right? If you don't have access to it. This is why I've encouraged all of my peers to make Gumroads or mentorships or start their own schools. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Mhm.
All for the reason of the education system and how it treated me and how I think it treats others, right? And if I didn't have that, you know, that's what I'm trying to get at, right? Like if I didn't have any of that information or that knowledge or that prerequisite of suckiness, you know,
No, I
maybe
do understand that, but
maybe I wouldn't have gotten to where I'm at. So with all that being said, um, when people ask me should I go to art school, I tell them no.
well, yeah,
Because
that
of
that
what you're saying, right? Like because what we've experienced, it isn't the wisest choice, and because we know better. And so then I try to tell it because they have not made those mistakes, and I usually tell my students something along the lines of, make your own mistakes, don't make the same mistakes that I made. Okay, and so like that's what you're supposed to do. Like when you're a pupil, you're supposed to take the information that your mentor has given to you, right? And follow along as far as it can take you, right? Until you're on your own and you make your own mistakes, you're prepared. So that's why I generally tell people to avoid um, some of these traditional or formal art schools because of that and that reason alone. So let me explain. Like I had a student who was taking my class, and he was like, I'm thinking about going to art center. And he's like, what do you think I should do? And I was like, don't go to art center. And I was like, you don't need to. And he was just like, what? The art center is like the best, one of the best art schools in the world. And I said, that's true. Like it's one of the best, and you'll learn a lot, but it costs too much money, and you already have what it takes. Like you already put a lot of good effort in what you do, you know. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's really all that matters. And I was like, but if you really want to go somewhere, you should go to Brainstorm, which is a school that I'm actually going to be teaching at now, right? But at the time I wasn't, and I just good friends with, you know, John and James, and they're really good instructors, and they have a really good school. And I told them the same thing, you know, I told them, yeah, go to that school because it will cost you far less. Yes, it costs a lot of money up front, sure, you know,
Well,
but
yeah,
but in the long run, it's actually super cheap according to like all these other educational platforms, right? And you're getting a tremendous value. And I told him that, right? And he trusted me. He still was kind of resilient, right? He's like, nah, you know, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to Brainstorm for a little bit, try it out, and I think after I do that for a little bit, I'm gonna go to Arts Center. And I think that's what I'm gonna do. And I said, okay, that sounds good to me, you know. And after 2 months of going to Brainstorm, he messaged me on Facebook and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to Arts Center. And I'm like, gotcha.
what happened?
Well,
What
because
made him
Brainstorm
change
has
his
everything
mind?
he needed. He understood what I meant as soon as he saw it. He said because they had like some sort of curriculum structure, the instructors there were amazing instructors, you know, and it was at the margin of the cost. Like everything he needed to learn, he can learn from those peeps. You understand?
Nice.
I
Yeah.
actually just got done with 3 terms at CDA a couple of months ago.
Yeah, that's another great place. And
So it's so good.
yeah, and it's super cheap, right? Like
It is, yeah.
comparatively, right? Let me give you an example. Like when I went to Art Institute, my math class that I was forced to take because they're accredited school and they make you take these classes, costed me $1,200 a term. Some of these classes that you're saying like CDA or Brainstorm, they're only like 500, even $700 for like the whole term. That's half the cost almost, right? But the difference is that the classes that I took with, or like the class I took at AI, some of these instructors never worked in the industry at all, you know? And so it's kind of like, and I'm not trying to get across that if you've never worked in an industry that you don't have anything valuable to teach. It's just that if you have worked in the industry, you have a lot more validation in terms of your information that you're actually giving out to people. There's a little bit more credibility, right? And so that's something that I discovered too when I was going to Art Institute, was that the credibility of some of my instructors was very, very small, right? Like some of them were just like recycled students, students that went to that school, couldn't find a job after like a year or two, reapplied as an instructor at the school, got the job, so then they can teach other people how not to get jobs, right? And that became very clear to me very quickly, you know. And so what I'm trying to get at is that, you know, Brainstorm, CDA, a lot of these like, you know, more workshop based or trade school based educational platforms are just, they're just a lot more focused on the students, um, because they're a smaller institution and they're the people who are running these things are not solely money driven. You know, they need the money to pay the bills, um, but it's not going to make or break, you know, it's not going to make or break their livelihoods. And so that's why they can charge at a reasonable cost. That's why I can, right? Like $500 is not as expensive as, like, again, $1,200. And I've had really great compliments from my class where people would tell me that in the month they've spent in my class, they learned more than they did in universities where they spent hundreds of and tens of thousands of dollars. And that's sad. It should not be that way. It should not be that way at all. And so yeah, I generally tell people to avoid art school, especially if it's really institutionalized, meaning that it's like it's like super corporate, because that means they're even more further removed from the students than they were if they weren't corporate. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on art schools. Hope that gives you some validation, vindication.
Art graduate school student here.
Cool,
I just
man.
recently graduated from FIU with a bachelor's in arts. And I guess a lot of my digital practice has always been like self-practice. I've never really, like, the digital classes actually didn't start coming in until the end of my term.
That's
So I was
bizarre.
only getting like a few of the beginner courses. Yeah, they were a bit behind in terms of like tech, softwares, and
Uh-huh.
all that. And now I'm just like more concerned now. Like I've already graduated. A lot of the traditional skills I learned translated pretty well to the digital. Uh, and I'm just kind of between, like, I don't know what kind of job I want to look for at the moment, whether it's like concept artist or illustrator. Like I kind of
Sure.
enjoy both in their own aspects. But I just have like a difficulty, like I just want to get right into the industry. Like, do you have any sort of like insight on how one could start that?
So first we gotta like condition you to stop thinking that way. Okay, so you went to art, it's the some sort of art college, and you just graduated, um, and you don't have a job yet, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah, no.
How long have you been out of school?
Just ended last month, so.
Okay. And do you have anything lined up? Anything? Any kind of prospects?
I mean, some involve maybe moving to another state from Miami to somewhere else where, like, I guess, just I want to, I guess, go somewhere where the game industry is more like prevalent.
Yeah, I
Because
got you.
here in Miami, there's not a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. So how long have you gone to that school?
The 4 to 5 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, dude. It sucks. I mean, it's just the truth, dude. Like, you got duped, you know? Like, many of my friends and myself. It's just like, it's the, especially in America, man, we got our act all screwed up, dude. It is bad
In,
here.
in Poland too.
Okay. And
Because
hey, don't
I
forget
think
about us
it's
Polish. No, we're screwed too. And then don't forget Serbia. Everyone here is
yeah.
screwed, man. We're all screwed. Yeah, so
Ask Milan.
that's selfish of me. That's American. That's a good old American tactic to think that we're the only
It's
country with problems. Um, anyway, um, yeah, so let me retract that. Like it's really a systematic problem that's found across the world, right? And it's this idea of like, okay, you're born, right? You're born, and then you go to school. Then you go to school for a few more years, and then you go to school for a few more years, and then when you graduate from all the schools, then you have to go to school again. And then once you go to school, you get a piece of paper that supposedly gives you a job in the thing that you went to school for. So you get that job, you work that job, you get promoted, you make enough money to retire, you buy a house, you get married, have children, and then yeah, you retire and then die, right? The dream,
yeah.
living the dream. And so you have to see how that's kind of like a terrible situation, actually, right? And I don't know my history well enough to kind of really put a pinpoint when and how this kind of really got assimilated in most Western cultures, or not. Again, I keep saying Western, but it used to be true because China and Japan and Korea were really behind, but now they're like leaders. So it's more of like the industrial countries, right? Um, and even like other countries like India and stuff are starting to really catch up. And so uh, industrialized countries, this idea of like if you don't go to college, specifically like college, then you are not going to make a good living or a good life for yourself. Okay? And that's just factually just incorrect. Objectively and factually wrong. You know? And here's the thing, man, like when you were going to high school and you were going to whatever schools you were going to, the types of stuff that was probably shoved down your throat was that you either needed to be an engineer, a doctor, or some sort of scholar, right? Does that sound familiar? And and
Yeah.
everyone's like, yes.
That's
And that's because that's what the education system is kind of built around. Those like 3 jobs. Newsflash, there's more than 3 jobs in the world. Okay? And that's why I said earlier, like me and my wife talked about this, we generally are going to pull my daughter out of uh, middle school and high school uh, to basically avoid her getting her dreams crushed. Same thing with my boys, right? My baby boys. Because they have the unique situation of having a parent that understands the educational system is fucked. Okay? I already have 2 kids that are going through the standardized educational system, and they both got fucked, just like I did, right? And so I'm like, yeah, and I put them in really good schools too, and still, systematically, they think that they are failures if they don't do these things, and I'm just like, you got it twisted, boy. You know, I remember I had a really good sit down with my son, and I said, look, you have to understand, you can literally do whatever you want, and we won't judge you for it. In fact, the only thing that we're really critical of is that you don't do anything, you know?
Wait, how did it happen? I mean, he's like, what, 3 years old?
No, I have 5 kids, and so I've just a newborn,
Gee.
and then I have, hey, take it easy, Serbian bastard. And then, and so I have 2 stepchildren, and one of them is 20, and the other one is 16.
Oh, okay.
And so the 20-year-old I have these talks with, and he's completely capsized. He's changed his perspective recently, which is great, really great. But anyhow, um, but I saw it happen to him, and I'm just like, yeah, it's freaking crazy. And I remember having a really good conversation with him about the fact that he doesn't need to prove to anybody other than himself, but he has to understand that this is the real world at the same time, and he has to pick something to kind of move his bar of fulfillment, because right now he doesn't feel fulfilled. He feels depressed. He gets upset about every little thing, and I tell him it's because you don't have anything to latch onto, right? And I told him, I was like, look, like, dude, seriously, you can do whatever you want. You have to understand that we got your back, right? Like, we even told him, like, if you wanted to be like a porn star, like, that's seriously, like, that is, we do not have these types of preconceived notions of what it is to be successful, you know, other than you doing what you love, right? It's like, as long as you're not like literally hurting anybody, like physically murdering people, like, we won't support that, right? But like, if you go ahead and do something that, like, society would look down upon or frown upon, but it brings good money and you're not hurting anybody, of course we're going to support that, right? And just to try to give him perspective, because the education system kind of made him, he said he wanted to be a doctor at one point, and he said he wanted to be an engineer at one point, and he said he wanted to be a nurse at one point. He kept on going back and forth between like these 3 different careers. And I'm just like, like, where is that coming from? Like, he has never shown any interest in any of this stuff, only until he went to high school, right? And so that's when I discovered, oh yeah, that's right. I went to high school. They crush your dreams in high school and in middle school. I remember, you know? And so then when you go to college, guess what? Because the system is built around, hey, go to college. And then college, you go there, they're like, yeah, like, this is a job, we think, that you can have. And you can totally have that job if you just go to school for 4 years, 5 years. You totally can have that job, right? But the reality is that's a fucking lie. How can they promise something like that? I don't even promise that, right? And I actually generally have seen many of my students get really great careers in this industry at the hands of my own hands. Like, I've literally like grabbed my students' portfolio, put it in front of an art director, and then they got a job. I've done that for my students, on several occasions. But I still even tell my students that I can't do that for everybody, because it's just not. This just doesn't how. It's not how it works, right? And so I always give the kind of advice that's more practical, and I'll give that in just a second. But the point I'm trying to tell you guys is that the system has really kind of trained you to think that this is how it works, how the real world works, and that's how you're going to gain success and happiness. And I'll tell you right now, it's all bullshit. It's just not true. Okay? Now, it might seem very like dystopian and very, very pessimistic point of view. No, it's very realistic. I like to call myself a realistic optimist, meaning that I look at the bright side of things, but I keep it very real, homies, you know? I'm from the streets. And and so what does that mean? So what's the optimistic side of it? Well, the optimistic side is that good work and effort is generally rewarded. You hear what I'm saying? And that's a kind of a conservative point of view. I remember I had an argument with somebody because they felt that I was a Democrat or super left leaning, and I said no, I lean definitely to the left because a lot of what left believes in is like inequality and helping those who are in need. Seems pretty legit, okay? But
Mhm.
at the same time, I understand the conservative point of view, especially when it comes to competition. You know, people say, you know, competition works. And I say, see, that's the problem. I hate this idea of overgeneralizing. Like, no, there's always examples on the contrary. And if you don't pay attention to that, then you're going to always have flaws in your argument. The world is made of many different colors and colors that we can't even see. Like there's visible light that we can't, or there's light spectrums that we can't see, you know, but they're there. You understand? And so I say, you know, why doesn't it work with healthcare and education? Because of the product that's being sold. It's the future of the next generation that's at jeopardy, and that will detrimentally screw the nation who does not take care of their next generation. It is revealing the short-sightedness of humanity when we do make these types of decisions. Okay? But those countries who have the hindsight say, nah, if you really invest and put money into the people, then the whole country builds up, right? And that's why you started seeing a lot of these more European countries starting to rise up and do really well, especially the smaller countries, you know, who can really rapidly iterate. And so, but competition does work, right? I think it's Switzerland that had like this kind of state-by-state type of competition, and it works really well. But at the same time, they have free healthcare and free education for all, right? And so it's like it can work. You can have both. You can have this more socialistic aspect of life, and that's also a very conservative and very capitalistic aspect of life. They both work. And so this is where I'm going to stand on the conservative side of the line and explain that when you're an employer, think of it from the point of view of an employer. Why would I want to hire you when I can hire another artist that's on ArtStation that's clearly better than you? The answer is pretty hard to stomach, but you know the answer, right?
Yeah.
Like, why would I, like, let's say you and I were applying for the same job. Why would they hire you over me?
They wouldn't.
And that's the fact. But does that mean can you never get a job ever in the existence of all time? No, obviously not, right? It just demonstrates that if you do put the time and effort, you will be the better option because that's what employers do. They hire the best option. And if you're not the best option, don't be delusional. Do not be naive. Just realize that you need to become the best option eventually. All right? It's that simple. And schools don't teach that because if they taught that, then you would be questioning why you're going to that school, right? You'd be questioning, wait, so they're telling me that I have to have work that's really extraordinary, but yet they don't teach me to have extraordinary work. Wait a minute, right? So that's why they kind of delay like your portfolio building towards the end of the course when it's too late. Isn't that bizarre that they say, we're going to help you build your portfolio towards the end, not start to teach you how to build a portfolio from the beginning and update it throughout the course of your career at the school? Doesn't that make more sense to build and create a portfolio from the get-go? You can learn foundations, you can learn fundamental and structural ideals and design elements early and build a portfolio at the same time. Instead of having your students do life drawings and just only have naked people for the first year of their, like still life and naked people for the first year of their school, They can have still life and naked people that they eventually convert to character designs all in the same term. Show the correlation, right? Why it's important to learn anatomy and how you apply it in the same class. That can happen, you know? But they don't do that because they're trying to stretch out that dollar, dog. You know? They're trying to stretch your money, stretch your time, because the more time you're in school, the more money they make. Like, it would be really good business strategy for me to make my courses like a 1 year long program where I just kind of like lead you on for a year. Yeah, I can make tremendous amounts of money that way, I'm sure. But
Can I ask a
I don't
question?
roll that way. So yeah, of course. Just let me finish this thought actually. And so going back to kind of this like conundrum that you're running into, right? Like, well, how do I break it into the industry? This is the advice I give to all my students. That's the most practical advice I can give. The only thing you should worry about is the quality of your work and the connections that you make in this industry. Those are the two things that will help you get careers. It's a numbers game. It's a statistically, you're increasing your chances. Do you understand? Because what you're doing is, if your work is really good, then you're increasing your chances by the quality of your work, right? People hire people that are good, okay? So that's one thing that you're doing to increase your chances. And the other thing that helps you increase your chances is knowing more and more people that work in the industry, like going to workshops, going to talks, doing art challenges, like ArtStation has a challenge. Doing that, putting your artwork out there so people know that you actually exist, that you're actually a really good artist, you know? Like, there's like a great example, actually. Recently, there was a guy that one of my students shared his work, this guy right here. And I was like, whoa, this guy's amazing, right? I had no idea who he was. And when I remember how many people was following him before, and I'm glad to see this still pretty low. Okay? It's only 267 people are following this dude. Okay? And when I checked before, it was only 150, so he got about 100 more people. This is really hilarious. It's like internet. Anyway. But like, look what he did for the art challenge. Look how amazing this is. Like, this guy has just been like hiding in like a basement somewhere, just perfecting his skills, Rocky style, you know? Like training in the cold wilderness. Like, he's out doing still life and plein air paintings in the cold rush in winter. This is how I imagine him, right? Just wearing a tank top and shorts and like fighting bears, you know? And then he's like, today I am going to submit to the art challenge. And then just blow up the internet, right? Kim Jong-ji is another great example. Like, this guy has been drawing for
Oh,
decades. And then one day he decided
it's
to
amazing.
record himself painting, or I'm sorry, drawing. Someone recorded him. Maybe he didn't want to do it, but someone else did. They're like, dude, you're amazing. People need to know you're amazing. Recorded him drawing an amazing illustration from like starting from a toenail all the way to like a full-fledged illustration, right? Someone recorded that, put it on the internet, and then everyone's like, what the? You know? See, because he did one thing right. He got real good, okay? But he did one thing wrong. He didn't tell anybody. And until he did, then his whole career exploded. You understand? So those are really only the two things that you should really kind of focus a lot of your attention on, is the quality of your work and the amount of exposure that you give to that work, okay? The reason why you guys know who I am is because of the people I taught before, my artwork on many different websites and platforms. I've been interviewed in several different occasions. Oh, apologize for the baby crying. He's getting changed right now. He hates transitions. He hates transitions. What? I was sleeping comfortably? No. And so you see what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so school doesn't do that really well, man. Like, sometimes they don't train you to be good at what you do. Like, they'll let you pass your classes with B's and C's, giving you this impression that average work is okay in the industry. Nobody's like that, dude. Like, think of it like, just put yourself in the position of an employer. If you have a job that you need to do and you're hiring other artists to help you do that job, and an artist does average work that's not acceptable, are you going to be like, you know what, you gave it your best shot, do better next time, and then keep employing them? It just doesn't work that way, you know? So that's why I don't grade my students. That's why I don't say you got an A. No, I gauge your personal growth and give you complete and utter support to keep you painting, because that is the trick, to keep painting, keep working, keep drawing, keep learning, because eventually you're going to be a badass. It's just how it works. You're just eventually going to be an amazing artist if you just keep at it for many years, right? And my job as your guys' mentor is to encourage you and to give you as much goddamn information to make you have no doubt in your mind that that's true, okay? And so, will you get a job tomorrow? Ugh, I have no idea, yeah? Like, sometimes you'll be just the right amount of good for somebody. You might know every single person at the studio and still might not get a job. Why? To no fault of your own. There's no positions, right? Like, they already filled the quota and they just don't have room for you. They would love to actually hire you, but they just can't. They don't know, either they don't have the budget or they don't have the room. That's a thing that happens too, you know? So you can't control that. All you can control is, are you damn good and do people know about it? All right? And that's what I usually give in terms of practical advice, because that's realistic. But it's optimistic, right? Because it demonstrates that, yeah, if you just keep at it, it's just a matter of time, right? And it really is true. Now, you might not be working for the biggest and baddest studios right away, but eventually you might. I already have plenty of students that's starting to happen. But I have a lot of students who are still in the dirt and really grinding it through, and they're really struggling. But I tell them, keep at it, man, because there's plenty of opportunity out there. You just got to keep digging for it. So hopefully that gives you some help. Yeah.
More than enough. That was.
Okay, great. Yeah, because don't get me wrong, man. Like, I'm a big fan of education. Like, I really believe that education is a great tool to bring a lot of happiness and success to people. It's just that when people truly profit from something like education, it disgusts me. Like, I make a profit, but not in the way that I was just describing. Like, not at the cost of my students. You know, that doesn't make any sense to me. I think it makes more sense to me that if all the students that go to your school become a badass, that's good for business. So it doesn't make any sense to turn out terrible artists. But then I thought about it, and I was like, oh, the reason why is because they just take everybody and anybody, and they don't put a cap at it, right? They just take all the people. If my classes had 40 or 50 people in my class, I would not be able to do as much insightful advice as I do right now, right? I just wouldn't be able to. There just wouldn't be enough time. So it'd have to just be kind of like grind out like my criticism, and at that point, I wouldn't feel justified with the cost of the class. Like, my heart would not be cool with that, you know? And so keep that in mind.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Someone else had a question. I'll take like 2 more questions and I'm going to roll out.
Yeah, I've got some technical question.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry for interrupting before. um, about anatomy, like, what do you think is the best for improving your anatomy? To paint from imagination, or like what little reference? Like, what would be your advice? Because I usually use lots of reference for my paintings.
Sure.
And
So here's the thing. Everybody uses reference. It's just a reality.
yeah.
Okay. Like, you might think that I don't use any reference. So you just see me paint and you just think AJ just has a vivid imagination. And that may be true, but the reality is that I put a lot of time and effort in practicing what I do, right? And
Mhm.
that truly is what I think, that's why I paint the way I paint. It's because I can study, and I study a lot. So what ends up happening is that it's not that I don't use reference, it's that the reference is internalized. So if you were to ask
Mhm.
me to draw or paint like a cat, it's the famous
Mhm.
cat that Asia cannot draw, I would have a really challenging time. So I would have to use tons of reference externally. You
Mhm.
understand me? I would have to gather lots of reference images and
Yeah.
videos to be able to accomplish that. But if you ask me to draw robots or like spacesuits or monsters, things that I've drawn countless amounts of versions of, right? I don't really need to pull up reference for that. I can kind of just go for my gut because my gut's full of awesome robot shapes and stuff like that. You know?
Mhm.
And so if you find yourself using more external reference, but would prefer to use more internalized reference, that means you just need to start using external reference as your main source, and you need to study more. Like you got to study
Mhm.
what you don't know. Um,
Mhm.
here's a good analogy, or not analogy, but a good way of thinking about this. Um, one time a student was asking me about like how to use like an elliptical tool that I was using on some other software, right? They're like, hey, I saw you use this thing. Like, why do you like? What's the best way to use an elliptical tool or whatever? And I said to them, actually the fastest way to draw an ellipse correctly
Mhm.
is to just draw it correctly, right? That's like literally the fastest way. It's actually faster to draw a straight line, straight, if you just draw a straight line.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, yeah, okay, I get that. Like, no, like think about that. It's faster just to just draw a straight line. But then you'd say, well, it's very hard. It's difficult. Exactly. Because if you had to think about it and you need to draw a straight line and you think, well, drawing a straight line is more effective using a ruler, right? You're right. Unless you know how to draw a straight line without a ruler. Do you see my point? Then it's actually slower to pull out the ruler, place it down, then draw your straight line versus just drawing the straight line the way that you intended. And if you think that's not possible, then watch Scott Robertson draw straight lines.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so do you
Amazing.
see what I'm getting at? So now
Yeah.
apply that to what you're asking, right? Like how can I draw anatomy much better, right? Without using a lot of externalized reference. Then you got to just know how to draw anatomy. And that's fucking hard. Okay?
Yeah.
Because you
It
have to
is.
know anatomy. You have to draw on plenty of variants of anatomy and the proportions and design. And it's really challenging. But once you've put that effort and put that investment into that type of training, then it will be faster to draw a character than it would be to use DAZ 3D. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But as the case stands, it's not the situation for a lot of people. So that's why they prefer using DAZ 3D. Like it is actually faster for me still to this day to paint my concepts than to use 3D. You know? Like
Yeah.
3D is slower. Like I can paint like this concept I painted, I've been painting off and on, right? I stop and talk and then paint and stop and talk and paint for probably over 45 minutes at the most. Right? And it's already fully realized and has a sense of three-dimensionality, doesn't it? To do this in ZBrush would take me so much longer. It'd probably take me the whole day. And the power of this is that if my boss says, well, make the arm bigger, then I can make the arm bigger even faster than in ZBrush or 3D Code or any of these amazing tools.
Mhm.
I use them though. I still use them. They're great tools, But I gauge what the value is. It's like, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish, you know? And if it's like just to pull out a really quick concept, then painting will always be the winner, at least for now, until 3D tools become so intuitive, right? That then it will capsize using digital tools. like, or digital painting tools. And I believe that can happen. Remember I said you're foolish to believe that that kind of change won't exist.
Yeah, automation like goes really
Yeah.
fast now. It's
There
like we
might,
made amazing progress.
yeah, there might be a tool that like
Crazy.
allows me to conceptualize in 3 dimensions. Like I'm starting to see like my friend Jama use these VR tools that kind of are doing what I'm thinking is the next step, next evolution of production, right?
Yeah.
I really believe that. I believe VR is going to be is going to be adopted first in production versus what you call it, versus commercial use, like people using it. I think it's still too clunky and big for people to really get into it, right?
Mhm.
But when it comes to tools, like I actually think it makes way more sense than like some sort of fun like game thingy. Don't get me wrong, some people are going to love VR just for the gaming, but I think before it can really hit the commercial markets, there needs to be a little bit more time. What I will say is that I don't think VR is going anywhere though. I don't think like, because VR will sometimes show up and then people are like, this is garbage, and then it will go away for a while. You know,
Mhm.
I don't think this is the time that it's going to happen. I think it's here to stay now. It's just it's going to take a little bit before it gets commercialized. But in terms of production, I think there's some value there in terms of the tools. So keep your eyes open there. But yeah, the hard answer to that, right? It's like just be better artist. you know, but don't
Yeah.
feel bad that you have to use reference like externally. Like everybody uses reference, just some people internalize it, others don't. The value of internalizing it is obvious, right? You don't have to Google anything. You can just get going, get started, right? And then
Mhm.
later go on Google to really refine and perfect whatever you started, right? Like if I really wanted to nail this face, I would go online and find like an actor or a person that I want to emulate. But just to get started, I don't need to do that, you know?
Mhm.
But refinement, yeah, absolutely. I'll go online and find some more references to really sharpen this image. Hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That was very insightful.
Great.
Especially yesterday, like, using reference, like I never did that with the plants and stuff and just change directions. So.
Yeah, remember, anytime you have a hard time with anything, it's really just a matter of lack of experience. It's really that simple. And so you just need to be more alert to that, so that way you don't get disgruntled, right? That way you don't get super frustrated with yourself, because it happens. People get so frustrated when they don't feel
Yeah.
like they're doing as good a work as they should be. And it's like,
Mhm.
in any other instance, like if we were like playing a sport and then I asked you to be all of a sudden amazing at it out of nowhere, you would laugh at me and be like, well, why would I be like, how is that possible? I just started playing the game. Like I just learned the rules. And now you want me to be like the MVP? Like what are you talking about? So it's kind of it's also the same kind of like ludicrousness that people do that to themselves. Yeah. Whenever
Yeah.
they tackle new things that they're not very good at, they all of a sudden feel like they should be rock stars. And it's just like, no, why would you? You have no right to be a rock star. You
Mhm.
just started learning this. And here's a good way of thinking about this too. One last thing. I'm going to take one last question. Another great way of thinking about this is like, imagine uh, uh, Usain Bolt, right? He's a super fast runner. He's the fastest actually in the world, at least recorded. And he he is the fastest sprinter, but just because he's the fastest sprinter doesn't mean he's the fastest marathon runner.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Now they're both running, right? They're both the sport of running, but they're different. And I think sometimes people don't associate that with art sometimes. Like you might be really good traditionally sometimes, like you might be a really good sketch artist. And then when you start learning digital painting tools or whatever, you'll have this kind of feeling of you might have this feeling of like I'm so good at this other thing, this other medium. Why is that not happening here in this other medium? And I'm trying to say that's like the same as saying, why isn't Usain Bolt a marathon runner, right? They're just two different disciplines. They fall under the same tree, right? So I can see how you can get confused, but you should always, as a good piece of advice, treat everything like you just don't know anything, okay? Even if it seems like it's similar. Like if I wanted to get into environment art, for instance, like it's concept art, it's still kind of the same world, right? I would treat it as if I'm a terrible environment artist, which is the truth. And I would not be delusional is what I'm trying to get at. Just because I'm an amazing character artist doesn't mean that I'm all of a sudden going to be knocked like a rock star environment. It's going to take some time, you know? Even within characters, just because I can do like robots and maybe monsters and some creature and some fantasy doesn't mean that I can maybe do like Yakuza designs, like more contemporary, you know? Like I treat everything like if I haven't put a lot of effort into it, then I'm probably going to suck at it. And if I'm not sucking at it on the first, try or whatever, then maybe I have already some experience that I didn't recognize from my past life. Okay?
I have a
thank you.
question.
All right. Go ahead. What's your question?
Uh, I know the character thing it is my thing. I know what I good at it and what I wanna do it. And when I see the job requirement,
Uh-huh.
almost every studio says they wanna do great character and do great environment and do the great props, everything.
Uh-huh.
Something like good, do it good at everything.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know how can I approach to my portfolio and working on it or practicing to I couldn't do I don't know how it is
So
literally
let me
everything.
let me just stop you. I understand what you're trying to ask.
Uh,
So you're saying how like some careers or some jobs or companies are saying we want someone that can do multiple things, and how can you
yeah,
like get an
yeah.
opportunity there? I'd say maybe you just don't work there. You have to understand that there's more than one company. Okay, right? Like yes, some companies might want you to be a generalist, but other companies want a specialist. You hear what I'm getting at? So let's see what does that
Yeah,
mean. So let's see what that means.
yeah.
So let's look at a company like Blizzard, right? So senior
Mhm.
concept artists, let's see what they're looking for. Permanent, create characters and environment concepts for pre-production of our award-winning animated shorts and cinematics in Overwatch, Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft, Hearthstone, etc. Oh, there it is. See, AJ?
Yeah,
What can I do?
yeah.
Well, maybe apply for the concept artist character position. What?
It feels like
Create character concepts, including character sheets, movement studies, and detailed breakouts for weapons sequences.
Jesus Christ.
Wait a minute.
yeah.
Where's the environment? I thought all jobs wanted me to do environments. It's just that's not. Again, think about it. Like, it's there's always going to be an assumption you make that is just wrong unless you can prove it right. Just assume, like this is what I do. I just assume I'm an idiot and I don't know anything until I see evidence otherwise, right?
Mhm.
And so if you only look at one job post and gauge that for the rest, you're overgeneralizing. You have to understand that because you have to say, okay, this one job opportunity I see online says that I have to do environments too, right?
Mhm.
But I know Anthony Jones and he only does characters. So clearly that's
Mhm.
not true for all jobs. Does it make sense?
Mhm.
Like there's
Yeah.
clear evidence that there are people that only do characters and that's all they do. You understand what I'm saying? Me,
Mhm.
I'm one of them. Okay? And
Yeah.
so you have to understand that like yes, there are some companies that will only want that. Then I guess you just can't work there. Just accept that. That's just reality. I love Pixar animation, man. Every time I watch their movies, especially their some of the better ones, right? I cry, man. They're good. I love them. Finding Nemo, Wall-E, some of my favorite films, not just like favorite animated movies, right? Like I'm talking about like in the top 10 favorite movies I've ever seen, those two movies are like in that top 10. You get what I'm saying? Like not just animated movies, I think like great movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never work at Pixar. You understand? Not because I don't
Yeah.
want to, because they're not going to hire me, man. Look at my work. What in what world would John Lasseter call me up and be like, "Hey, you know this like crazy mutant sci-fi dude you did? We're really we're rethinking the vision for Incredibles, and we want this to be the new look." You know, it's not gonna happen,
Yeah.
man. It's just not gonna happen. I can't work at Pixar, not because I'm not a good artist. It's just I don't have work that is what they need. Okay, and so you have to understand that that's just how the world works. Some companies will only hire their best option, and sometimes they want someone that is just the best at that thing because they know they will get the best results because of that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And other
Yeah.
companies are smaller and they can only afford one new team member, so they need to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you can do multiple things. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
if you aren't interested in multiple things, then don't apply for those jobs. Just don't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just accept that that's the reality, right? And you'll be fine. Okay? There's plenty of different types of jobs. Like there's a senior environment artist, but I think this one's a 3D one. Unless they specify a concept, that usually means modeler.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, don't people who do Hearthstone illustrations, they all do freelance, right?
Yeah?
For Blizzard, yeah.
There's all sorts of
There's still
there's all
hope,
sorts of
guys.
walks of life and all sorts of different scenarios. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like there's options. Okay? That's all I'm trying to say. You know? Like
Mhm.
if you overgeneralize, you'll be shocked. You know, you'll be shocked to realize that this is not true. Now, I had a student, or actually, she wasn't a student. She's just a really good friend, but she was a student when I met her. That's what happened. And she was stressing out. She was just like, I need to get this in my portfolio because um, like I'm afraid I'm not going to get a job and all this stuff. She was freaking out. And I was like, look, you're freaking dope. You'll be fine. And literally, like a week later, she got a job offer at Blizzard, and she's doing fine
Damn.
Oh, geez.
because she's really good. And
Who is she?
she was going to these events, and she was talking to people, and she's doing everything. And it's just that fear, right? That uncertainty that kind of paralyzed her a bit. And I say it's gonna happen. And what I did for her too is like I painted this picture as like, what if the worst thing could happen that you don't get the job? What are you gonna do? You're gonna quit? And the answer was obviously no, right? What if you don't find that character concept art job? Are you going to quit doing character concept art? No, right? Now, disclaimer, will your opportunities be increased if you can do multiple things? Of course. Of course, of course, of course, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean you can't specialize. It's not true. In fact, I encourage people to specialize because you'll get the kind of work that you want to do and you'll
Mm-hmm.
be really fucking good at it and most people will not be able to compete against you. They just won't, right? Unless they're
Right.
also specialists. And the greatest example of this is someone like Vitaly Bolgarov. This is all he does, pretty much. Just mechs, hard surface, like mech design. Like that's the thing. That's all he does. And he does really well. He makes a lot of money and works on a lot of great films because there is nobody, at least at the time, people are starting to catch up to him because he put his stuff out there. That fool.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kidding. um, but at the time, he was like the only person that was like doing work of this quality. The only person. Think about that. Out of all the people on this planet, and you have enough money to hire a mech designer, right? For realistic hard surface mech designs. Okay? you, with the fingers on your hand, like the 10 fingers, if you had to list artists that were of the best, Vitaly would be in that list. Do you see what I'm trying to get at? Like, he is on the top echelon of like amazing hard surface 3D character or 3D modelers. Okay? And that's why he gets paid the big bucks, because no one does it like Vitaly. Okay?
Mhm.
You would never see somebody like, if he took his work to a workshop to get it reviewed, there would be no fucking hiring manager to be like, you know what though, you need some diversity, bro. You need some environments. You need some character work in here. Nobody would say that to him, and if they did, they're an idiot. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's because when people do say that to you or to me or to anyone else, right? It's just a nice way of saying you're not really good.
Mhm.
Okay, that's really what it
Yeah.
is. Because if you were extraordinarily good, they wouldn't say any of that. They would say probably something a little more honest, like, dude, like this work is really good, but we don't have a place for you. You're too good for us. Right? Which is probably what happened with Vitaly every time he shows his work to anybody. Look at his roster, like his resume of stuff. It makes sense. All the stuff he works on is like hard surface character design or mech design. That's his thing. Look at my resume, like horror films and cinematic, like sci-fi stuff, right? And fantasy,
Mhm.
like over the top dramatic designs and mostly characters. 'Cause that's what I do. That's my thing. And so it is possible. I get it though. You guys are just like, you guys are blinded by your lack of experience, you know? But trust me, I've
Mhm.
seen all walks of life. You can do whatever you prefer. But you know, you'll hear some people say you should generalize, and those people are generalists themselves, and they are amazing too, and they're not wrong, you know. But
Mhm.
in my experience, I've discovered that that doesn't work for everybody, and there's always a case study or example of someone that actually contradicts that statement. Okay, and you should pay attention to those contradictions more, because that way you'll make you sleep at night. Okay. Otherwise, if you go on the assumption that if I don't have environments, I will never make it in this industry, it's just delusional. You're wrong. You know.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
is it hard? Yes, of course. Anything worth having is going to be difficult. Okay.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps you out. I know you're like running on like 4 in the morning on some fumes. You're like, yes, it makes sense. As your head falls slowly, it sinks slowly into your pillow. um, but don't get discouraged by like these types of job postings. Think of it like from their perspective. They're looking for this because they need it. It doesn't mean all studios are like that. Okay, all like many different studios want different things.
Yeah.
And if you look even in Blizzard, that's why I love like using Blizzard sometimes as an example. It's funny because Blizzard, like they have like 4 different teams and all different, all even though it's under one roof, they all work differently. It's really fascinating. Well, like so, I was on the cinematics team, for instance, and we were treated like an outsourced effects company,
Mhm.
right? So we worked completely different than like the WoW team, you know,
Mhm.
and it's funny because like I remember I would go to these events like GDC and stuff, and you know, I'll tell people I work at Blizzard, and then they'd be like, "Oh, dude, my friend works at Blizzard. Do you know so and so?" And I'm like, "I no, man. The company, there's 6,000 people." Like, I don't, oh yeah, Jimbo, back up in the Q&A, section 4, desk 17. Yeah, exactly know who he is. No, man, I don't.
I
I only know the cinematics team because that's the people I are very intimate with when I was working. Right?
I was actually going to ask you a couple of questions on that because I live in Irvine, so I know a couple of people who work at Blizzard, but it's
I
still
know them.
such a mystery to
Just
me.
kidding. I know exactly who they are. Yeah, no, I might not know who they are unless they worked on the cinematics team. I'll have a better chance of knowing who they are.
Well, I mean, one of them is from Blizzard Taiwan, and the other one, I don't really remember his name,
Yeah,
so I
so
doubt it.
the Taiwan, absolutely have no idea. But yeah, it's
um,
yeah, go ahead and ask your question, but I should get going because of my babies.
I was just wondering, like, because I'm literally like 4 miles away from the Blizzard offices.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been like in my mind, like, man, that's a bucket list thing to work at that company.
Sure.
So I was wondering, like, what would be an art test for, in I guess your case, cinematics department for that company?
So it took me like 5 years for me to get a job there, and it's only when I stopped trying to get a job there that they like asked me to work there. So I took like several art tests. I've done like all types of things, and I remember when I decided to stop, it's because I had a good career already. I was like working for really good companies and big projects, so I was content, you know. And I was like, you know what, like I would love to work at Blizzard. That's like my dream job. Like I love their games, and I would want to be there. But if I don't get there, you know what, I'm happy with what I got, dude. You know, life's good. And then like literally like I think 2 months later, um, they're like, hey, we have a cinematics position. We would love for you to work there. And I'm like, yep, let's do it. And I worked there for about a year and a half before I left. And I left because the grass is always greener, right? Blizzard is probably hands down my favorite company I've ever worked for. But even then, I think my personality type dictates that I should work for myself. It's just how I roll. I was a good employee. I did everything that, you know, was asked, and I enjoyed all the projects that I worked on. It's just that this kind of yearning to kind of do my own thing was just always looming in my mind, right? And I've discovered that although I was a great artist, being a good artist wasn't really what I cared about. What I really care about is learning and teaching. Like I love that, you know? Like I've consistently have been doing that my whole career. Even when I was a student, I would do concept clubs and get together with my friends. We would learn together and teach each other, you know? Like that is something that has been true even before I was an artist. When I was in bands, we would learn together and make music together, right? And I discovered that when I worked at Blizzard because I was at the pinnacle of my career and yet I didn't feel fulfilled. Okay. And then I just kind of looked inwards and said, what is the thing that I do a lot that always fulfills me? And I said, you know, I said, when was I even the happiest in my whole career? What was the moment where I was just truly satisfied with what was going on? And I said, you know what it was? When I was trying to have a career, like the position you guys are in right now. That was like the best part of my whole career was trying to get one, you know? Because I was constantly learning something new every day. It was fascinating, this world of concept art, right? And that just went away when you start becoming really dope at whatever you do. It just goes away, you know? And so when that realization came very apparent to me, then that's when I changed everything. That's why I do this professionally. That's why you guys can probably tell I love teaching and helping people stay inspired and motivated and achieve the kinds of goals that they want and be educated about it, right? You guys can tell. And so I can probably do this to the day I die. And so art just happens to be the thing that I teach, you know? Right now I'm learning coding and programming and game design. And eventually, probably 4 or 5 years from now, when I'm really good at it, I'm going to teach people how to do that too and teach people how to make their own games and make their own money and how to do it smart and how to do it effectively. Only until I've learned how to do it. And then who knows, maybe I'll learn something completely different another decade from now, right? But what will always remain true will be that I am going to be a mentor and instructor for many different people for many different fields. I heard a really good quote once that I think reflects kind of my personality, which was, you know, or my sense of vocation is that, you know, there's this guy said, you know, there's some people who are looking to make millions of dollars. I'm looking to change millions of lives. And I think that's perfect for the kind of personality type that I got. Like I've made lots of money in several different instances, and it's never fulfilled me as much as seeing my students get jobs, seeing like 6 foot, like 2-story tall statues of designs that they've done. You know, like that. I remember one time I saw like one of my students had a statue that was like 2 stories tall at E3, and I like nearly burst into tears. I was so proud of him. It was so cool, man. You know, that's way more fulfilling than me drawing really well. Okay, and so that's kind of what I want to make very clear to all of you guys. That's why I always say, do what you want to do. Life's too short. You can get hit by a bus tomorrow. It'd be silly if you were focused on these superficial things like making money. Don't get me wrong, though. Make some money so you don't live out on the street. but if you think that money, like making more money, is the salvation of your life, trust me, it's not. It really isn't. And I mean, case in point, look at the president of America right now. He has gotten everything he's ever wanted in his whole life. He is supposedly one of the most wealthiest people on this planet, and still is one of the most insecure, uneducated imbeciles, right? Like, he's the president of potentially one of the most powerful countries in the world, and he still complains on Twitter against actors and actresses and whines about news outlets making fun of him. What a fucking child, dude. It's like, you know, like someone who's truly secure. Like, you don't see Elon Musk like crying about like these things, because he's not on that level, man. He gets life. You know, you don't see Bill Gates like whining and crying about Microsoft stocks going down 1 year, right? And the news outlets making fun of the Xbox or whatever. He's like, nah, it's cool. I'm like curing polio, not polo, not the sport. I'm getting rid of that sport. I don't like it.
No one gets on a horse today.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Like, these are the kinds of people that inspire me. The people that are so wealthy and so they've reached what you would consider true success, and they themselves usually sacrifice all their income and profit to helping others because they realize that's way more fulfilling. You know? So it demonstrates to me that's true. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, these are like some of the biggest and baddest money makers in the world. I believe if Steve Jobs was alive long enough that he would have also done the same thing. Right? And so, anyways, hope that inspires you guys, keeps you guys motivated. And I got to get out of here. And and we got to let Yellen
Actually, I have a
sleep.
quick yes or no question.
No.
I see.
Yeah, what was the question? Sorry.
Is it possible? Could I mail you a Magic the Gathering card for you to sign that you actually
Oh yeah,
designed?
sure. Like, I do that all the time, actually. If you have the robotpencil.info@gmail.com, email John, because John usually helps manage that, and then it'll be taken care of, brother. Which card do you
All
have?
right. Then.
Is it the one?
Animate Dead.
Oh yeah. That's all right.
Great. Like, turn 1, discard a card. Turn
Yeah,
3, bring back
it's
another
all right.
card.
All right. The other card that I did was OP. I thought I heard it was like a really powerful card.
Fast and Flames?
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that one's metal.
Yeah. So.
I don't have that one though.
Well, then you don't have a good deck. Then you made mistakes in your life. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna let you guys go. Peace out,
Right.
friends. Have a great weekend, y'all. Talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you like the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.